All right. What's going on? What is going on, everyone? So, okay, hold on. there's obviously a few issues that we got to discuss. Namely, that number one, the spoilers for this new chapter are already out. So that makes what the fuck? I swear I complain about this every week, how early the spoilers are coming out week after week. Okay, first of all, everybody's complaining late. Let's get that out of the way first. I'm tired of hearing this because I feel like this is okay. You guys know in Spider-Man 2, who saw Spider-Man 2? Everybody say if you saw Spider-Man 2 or not. I'm talking about the original Spider-Man movies, not the ones with that annoying kid. Tom Holland's not annoying. It's just, the shtick is a bit much, of like him just being just the shtick of being an annoying kid, He's not annoying, but okay, I'm talking about the original Spider-Man stuff. The ones with Tobey Maguire, right? Who's seen Spider-Man 2? Who saw that one, right? Okay. You guys saw Spider-Man 2? So, in Spider-Man 2, do you guys remember towards the beginning, or it really was most of the problem for the first half of the movie, what's continuously happening? Peter Parker, he's Spider-Man. He's out there saving people, helping people, doing all sorts of great things for lots of people. And because of that, he's frequently late to certain things, right? He's late to deliver pizza to some people or something like that, right? He's late to MJ's play. He's late to helping Aunt May do the dishes or whatever, right? He's late to a lot of different things. Why? Because he's got responsibilities, right? He's got so many important big things that he has to do. He's got to be saving so many people and helping out so many people that he's frequently late, and he can't reveal his secrets, or he doesn't like talking about it to everybody, right? But that's just the way it is, right? So when I show up late to these streams, and then you guys, pile on and you're like, Morj, late, why is Lorge late, etc. I feel like it shows that we don't learn anything when we watch movies, right? Because it's just like, you don't take away any sort of message or anything like that. No one's sitting there being like, hey, maybe Morj was helping an old lady cross the street, even though I've told you I've done that multiple times, right? Nobody's like, hey, guys, let's lay off Morj. He's probably helping some old lady. He's probably helping some old lady cross the street, right? Nobody says that. I haven't seen that once in chat. Nobody's like, hey, maybe Morj was fighting the Green Goblin, right? So I just feel like this is very unfair. It's just, it's just a sign of, people not processing or taking away ideas or messaging from the art that we consume, Anyway, enough about that. Big Bro Cook says, do you think post-Egghead will get more Straw Hat arcs, or do you think we as an audience should stop expecting anything for the crew at this point? You saying more Straw Hat-centric arcs, or more arcs that have the Straw Hats? There's 3 layers to it, right? There's arcs that have the Straw Hats. I like to believe every arc is that, save for, I suppose, Wano, technically half of Dressrosa, technically half of Whole Cake Island. No, not Wano, sorry. Marine Ford, technically half of Dressrosa, technically half of Whole Cake Island. Then there's arcs that have the Straw Hats, but just not with storylines the way that we would really like Wano. They got their fights in the end, but they weren't really doing shit for the vast majority of the arc, so it was kind of, the fights were like a random, they just get it to get it, right? And then you have arcs where, you've got the Straw Hats and they're all involved, from start to finish, and clear important players in the storyline. I'd say that's like an Alabasta. And then finally you've got arcs that are very specifically focused on certain Straw Hats, right? Like a Whole Cake Island or something. I don't think we'll necessarily, maybe Elbaf could kind of be that for Usopp. I like to believe that we'll get arcs on the level of Alabasta or Enies Lobby in terms of overall Straw Hat focus again. I think the final arc will likely be that. Just because we're towards the end of the journey, right? A lot of the Straw Hat's dreams should at least be coming into play in some sense, so there's a lot of potential there, right? Spade, thanks for being Yonko tier member for 6 months. Morj casually comparing himself to a superhero. Hey, I didn't want to have to make that comparison. I would have loved if chat on their own accord was able to come to that conclusion that, hey, Morj is frequently late to these streams. I wonder if it's like Spider-Man in Spider-Man 2. I would have loved if you guys had naturally come to that conclusion. Sure, it makes me look bad when I have to say this stuff myself, but I'm just saying you guys should be making these connections yourself, you know? Maybe I should put out an analysis video talking about just my stream timeliness and just draw a lot from certain movies. Mainly Spider-Man 2, I'm thinking. That's pretty much the only one that really fits this situation. Loud Waffle says Spider-Man's theme is spiders are cool, don't gaslight. That's true. Guys, let's get the stream likes to 100 real quick. Big Bro Cook says arcs that have straw hats. Name one single arc outside of God Usopp that Usopp has had post time skip. I mean, Dressrosa's really the only one, right? I would argue that he had a nice small little role in Punk Hazard. When I say a nice small little role, I mean like he got to. We did get to see a new, more confident side of him. In certain regards, he was still cowardly towards the beginning of the arc and everything like that, but the speech that he gave towards the end regarding Luffy, how everybody draws courage from watching Luffy, how Usopp can't just turn tail and hide as long as Luffy is his captain, that was good for him. And I think one big step that we saw from him that we hadn't seen in the entire series before is that Usopp took it upon himself with nobody else around and really no stakes or consequences. No, I think there were stakes, I forget exactly, but the situation, but Usopp just took it upon himself to take out an entire room of Caesar's henchmen. Throughout the entire series, whenever Usopp's had fights, it's always been something that he's really been pushed to do, I suppose, or he kind of has to, or the responsibility just falls upon him, or he generally doesn't like to, and it's usually 1v1 fights where he manages to take out a stronger opponent. Throughout the series up to that point, there's just never been a point where Usopp solo just shows up and like takes out a bunch of bad guys, right? Like a bunch of mercenaries, like not mercenaries, a bunch of henchmen is what I mean, right? So I think that that's something a little significant. That's a more heroic and just bolder, braver side of Usopp. Yeah, that's just something small. So, but Dressrosa was the bigger deal for that, obviously. But I mean, Elbaf could be really good for him, right? I'd like to think. Professor Clover says, "Hey Morj, I saw you putting out that orphanage fire on your way here. Thank you. It's tough that it made you late, but I'm sure everyone in the chat understands." Thank you, Professor Clover. Everyone listen to Professor Clover. He's like the One Piece Professor Clover. He speaks the facts. He tells the history to everybody. Snap says, "I love the tinfoil hat in Morjcast, but no car Morj." People really miss the... Okay, so for people who don't know what you're talking about, if you either become a member, a Yonko tier member, or join the Patreon, right? Which there's a link to the Patreon in every YouTube video, or you can join as a member of the channel just by hitting the button on this. There's a button for joining as a member. If you become a Yonko tier member, it's basically $5 and up per month, basically. You get access to my weekly podcast where I give my unfiltered thoughts. What he's referencing here is specifically my tinfoil hat theory about why things turned out the way they did with Kid. I basically save my most unfiltered... The order of operations is not order of operations. The order of priorities, I suppose. Think of it like, you know how the Seraphim have their order of things? Like Gorosei, Vegapunk, then Sentamaru, then CP9. CP9, their order of like what they... You know, they're just their hierarchy of order, right? For me, basically, scripted videos that go on the channel, those are the tightest and most specifically chosen thoughts that I'm putting out there. Streams are generally for more unfiltered thoughts, right? And then the podcasts, which I record late at night, that come out once a week, those are the extremely unfiltered thoughts. Well, I'll just say whatever the shit I'm really thinking. So, just for those of you who are interested, the no car Morj thing, I used to record the podcasts in a car because it was just convenient for me to, if I was driving somewhere, I would record. I haven't done that in a long time, not since I used to live in Maryland. The reason being I used to have to drive to my producer's house, basically, editor/producer/cameraman's house to record videos, so it was easy to record the podcast on that drive. But now I'm in a different place, so I don't have to really do a consistent drive that's about 20 minutes every week. So the podcast is just recorded in my room. But it sounds like people really like the ambiance of the car. I'll see about maybe recreating that, but I don't know, man. It's just, I don't know. All right. Guys, let's get the stream likes up to 200. Cigarworks says Morj is late as he's in China. He has 5 kids named Pin Morj. I love the pin me. It's just, I've said this before, but the pin stuff it's just so Naruto Boruto-esque, you know? Pin Zoro. It's just such a Naruto Boruto moment. It's just like, what the fuck? Why is the name just the same thing but stupider? He serves jail time in day because of 2+ kids before stream. He has to feed all Pin Morjes. Behenort says, do you think Egghead has proper tension? How does it compare to Wano and Whole Cake? Whole Cake had the most tension in my... Because tension is basically... It's how the characters feel about the situation, right? So Whole Cake, you get to basically, right, a fairly severe spot partway through Whole Cake, which is like I just to give you, because I don't want to go through this a million times, you know. So just really quickly, I guess. Let me see. Like, here's what dramatic tension basically looks like. Basically, this section of the story, right? And I'll get to Egghead in a second. But this section of the story, so they've just beaten Cracker and everything. I would say that the Cracker fight actually did have tension, as Luffy had his back against the wall, and the way Nami was talking, she was really unsure about, like, it made it out to seem as though Nami was worried and scared about the Luffy fight. She found a resolve later in the fight and was like, you know, Luffy's gonna be the emperor. He can eat all your biscuits and stuff like that, obviously, or he's gonna be Pirate King, etc. But the Cracker fight did have good tension because it showed Luffy with his back against the wall and pretty uncertain and pretty frustrated against Cracker. It showed Chopper being... It started off with everyone... People can knock the Seducing Woods, but it did factually create tension in the story, right? We knew that it was temporary tension, and we kind of just wanted to get the main event, so we didn't like it. I know a lot of people didn't like it. I personally love the Seducing Woods, but if you want to say what tension is, Seducing Woods technically has tension because things are happening to the characters that are throwing them off. They don't understand. They're worried. They're scared. They have their backs against the walls, right? Carrot's being kidnapped. Chopper goes down. Nami is scared. She doesn't know what's going on. Luffy's struggling with Cracker. It seems like Luffy can't beat Cracker. Stuff like that's happening. But then they turn things around pretty quickly. This is the real section of Whole Cake Island that is the midpoint of the arc, right? This whole section starting with this. So the Sanji section is basically where it begins because you have, you know, all the characters are at a very low state, right? Nami is in tears. She's upset. Sanji's obviously completely broken. Luffy is obviously very upset. They're both in a very low emotional state, and then things just continue to spiral for them from here. Again, I'm waiting. Sanji will come. You know, Nami's scared, etc. Enraged army is coming. You see Luffy obviously in a very a relatively distraught state from usual. You see Luffy struggling, Nami scared, etc. Thunder, lightning flashing. Sanji's at his low point. Just generally this whole section, right? You can just go through it. It like stuff like this is basically what tension means, right? When a character is genuinely worried, genuinely scared. Character is genuinely out of their element. Even if we know Luffy's not going to die here, right? We don't know the direction that the story is going to take, and it clearly seems as though Luffy is set up for a loss here, which does happen. The Straw Hats are just out of their element, right? They're out of their element. Luffy's getting beat up, captured, etc. The tone of it all matters quite a bit here. That's just basically what tension is, and I'd say followed up by Sanji being broken up by Pudding, or the Sanji Pudding scene, etc. I think that's around here. Yeah, again, here, this is just adding to dramatic tension. Look at this. This is what tension is, basically. This is when you're communicating this very serious, dire tone, because the way the characters are experiencing the events of the story is clearly affecting them very deeply, bringing out all sorts of terrified, worried emotions. Wait, Pudding, what did you say? This is all stuff that's basically, this is what you would call tension. Keep in mind, Wano had literally zero of this, right? For Wano was... Luffy being knocked out happens frequently throughout Wano, but the point, like, this was made to be the point throughout Wano, is that it just doesn't affect him anymore. Nothing gets to him. The very next time we see Luffy in every case, after he's knocked out, is basically him laughing, smiling, happy. It just, nothing he bounces back from it over and over, and he keeps laughing about it, keeps smiling about it, right? This was a build up to him, unveiling the Nika fruit, reawakening, Spirit of Joy Boy, etc. Basically, and basically, like, the whole idea was painting him as this guy who's basically always comes out with a smile on his face, etc. But for the sake of building up Luffy in that direction, it also, I guess, the Wano arc just had to cut out the idea that we could see any sort of real emotionally affected scenes for Luffy, or any sort of, I would say Act 1, there was a moment in Act 1 where Kaido swoops in, shoots a Boro breath at the people on the mountain at the time, right? And then Luffy sees that, and Luffy is very thrown off about that, and his reactions and everything like that, and what he says to Trafalgar Law, etc. That is tension. So Act 1, I always thought Act 1 was good, right? It's just that from there on throughout the rest of the story, it's like nothing affects him. Whatever's happening, he's just never ever worried. There's no point basically in the rest of Wano after Act 1 that Luffy is ever worried, concerned, thrown off, uncertain, weak in any sort of way, right? It's just he's basically invincible from there on. Not physically invincible, right? He does get knocked out, but what I'm talking about when it comes to tension is the character is mentally, emotionally invincible, and they will just always keep coming back, unaffected by anything. Like, everything just bounces off him. He's always happy, right? That's just the rest of Wano. So Wano doesn't have tension. Egghead Island is developing tension in that many of the characters are thrown off right now, but they're not in a the majority of the characters, the Straw Hats, right? Like the main characters, Luffy, Zoro, etc., right? The stronger ones, they're yet to really be anything more than inconvenienced by what's going on. So that's really where any sort of... We would say Egghead Island has tension if something's actually deeply affecting Luffy in some way. I think that that's the highest bar that we can hit in the story. If Luffy's ever, like this again, right? Obviously this stuff, I don't think Egghead Island is meant to be a high tension arc for the Straw Hats, though. So I'm not exactly... Like, there's a... I don't want you guys to think that, in my mind, every arc is supposed to have Luffy all broken or beaten up or something like that, or sad or depressed or something like that, otherwise it's a bad arc. It's like, no, there's different arcs for different things. Egghead Island is a starter arc for the beginning of a saga. I don't expect at all that it's going to push Luffy to something crazy. If it does, that's great, but I'm not holding it to that. It's just that Wano's totally different in that Wano's, Wano's Wano. It was the conclusion to everything, so it's very different. That's an arc that you would compare to an Enies Lobby, to an Alabasta, to a Marine Ford or something like that. So when you've got Luffy pushed to extreme emotional states in all of those, but never in Wano, and Wano's one of the most laughing, joking, happy arcs that he's ever had, it's pretty stark contrast. I don't know why I'm still scrolling through this. The second section of High Tension and Whole Cake was definitely the early phases after... You know what? Let me show again. Then I'll get to the supers. Because this is section 2, which I also thought was fairly good. It just probably dragged on too long for a lot of people's tastes, which I understand, which is once the chase part starts, right? Once the chase part starts, not here, I would say everything after Pedro's death is excellent tension. Excellent tension. Everything after Pedro's death. So, especially... So Pedro dies here, right? Pedro dies... Guys, let's get the stream likes to over 200. So Pedro dies. All characters' reactions, etc. immediately become a lot more serious. A lot more tears. A lot more desperate Luffy. Right? A lot more scared Nami, etc. Brook, Chopper all thrown off. So Luffy says he seems upbeat, right? But what actually happens, right? So the next couple chapters are pretty good tension, right? So first of all, this is establishing tension, right? Can't be Pedro is blah blah blah. They're all in a really broken low spot, and then Jinbei saying our foes are the ones who want to cry. We cannot allow ourselves to lose control. So they're in a really broken low state, but Jinbei saying even now we might be fucked. That shoreline was a place of certain death. What do you call? Luffy understood the stakes. Blah 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 blah. And sooner or later, this land's pirate queen will catch us from behind. So until we can escape the influence of Big Mom's territory, we must not let our guard down. Don't you hear Pedro saying that, basically? So even though they're in a really low state, they've got to get it together. And then they're looking over the horizon. Big Mom's still coming, etc. No, that can't be. All of this stuff is characters being thrown off, right? Characters being thrown off, being uncertain of what's going to happen next. Again, this is the opposite of what it was throughout all of Wano and Onigashima, where the characters were 100% confident throughout the entire thing, literally saying from the beginning, we literally can't imagine ourselves losing. It just seems so easy. That's basically it. Like, every other chapter is them basically just saying that, this shit's easy. Then throughout this fight, Luffy is consistently confused, uncertain, thrown off, unsure of what to do, blah, 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 blah. The next chapter is really, really good for this. Let's go to the next chapter. Next chapter is really good for this. Because this is the chapter I'm pretty sure Big Mom starts going nuts at the same time as, Zero Escape. Good name for a chapter. So this chapter, Luffy's just getting his ass beat. The Straw Hats are panicking. Luffy's telling them to smash the stuff. People are actually setting fire to the Straw Hats' ships through the mirror world. Luffy's yelling, knock it off. He's trying to stop them. He can't. Luffy's completely out of his depth. Luffy can't help them. He's like, I need to focus on him. Smash them all now. They're about to pile through. I can't stop them all myself. This is all signs of characters experiencing their limits. No, like, really unsure. Hello. We're sorry, Luffy. We might not make it. It is basically if you took everything that Wano had in the raid and then flipped those emotions to make it the opposite, that's what you have during the best parts of Whole Cake Island, right? So Whole Cake Island has a lot of tension. Hopefully this illustrates why Onigashima had little to no tension at any point, except for the moment that Luffy was believed to be dead, which is basically one chapter over the course of a 50-chapter long battle, which is pretty crazy. And then even the turnaround chapter, where Luffy's trying to convince them that he'll be okay. Look at what he's going through. Luffy, did something happen? Blah, blah, blah. He can't do anything. He's helpless. He can't do anything. So then he puts on a face. This is what Luffy's actually experiencing. This is what he puts on to try and convince them that he's feeling like that he's okay, that he's going to get through this, and that they can stop worrying about him. So Wano was more like if Luffy genuinely felt like this the entire time. Whole Cake Island is basically Luffy feels like this, but he's going to keep fighting and keep putting on a brave face for his crew and act like this, which is, in my opinion, much more dramatic. Wano is literally like this. Like, you go through the Luffy-Kaido fight, even well before Gear 5th, it's mostly Luffy laughing, having fun, saying, haha, you drunk, etc., right? That's the big difference. So, hopefully we don't need to go through this discussion about what tension is or isn't again. It'll all be in the Wano analysis video. This is just the broad strokes of it, and we can get more specific examples and counterexamples in that video, but that's the general idea. But anyway, let's move it along. Let me catch up on these. LD Sparaten says, Mihawk is the stronger swordsman as far as we know. Shanks' sword isn't a black blade. Yeah, I agree. Mihawk is the more skilled... Can't say skilled, right? Yeah, Mihawk is the better swordsman, right? He's got more mastery over the sword than Shanks, right? He's got a black blade. Guys, let's get the likes up to 300. Bitey McGar says, being late... Oh, fuck. Hold on. Scrolled straight past this. 1 second. Bitey McGar, that's a good name. Being late has its consequences. Like Spider-Man, you alternate yourself from those you care about, us, which leads us to grow disconnected and sad. Yeah, but Spider-Man also ends up getting with Mary Jane by the end because she understands and she accepts him for what he has to do. So... think about that. Leo Recto says, Mr. Mortar Morker, what do you think about Usopp's final stand being a tie with Green Bull in Raftel, considering they're kind of similar, plants and cowardice? Look, I know that Green Bull is not the most popular admiral, but to say that Usopp is going to take out Green Bull is severely underrating him at this point. Keep in mind, Green Bull was basically, he could take on all of the scabbards at the same time, pretty much. That's nothing to laugh at. He's a coward. I get the similarity, plants and cowardice, but I just can't imagine Usopp taking out Green Bull of all characters. That'd be insane. Right? Green Bull is still very strong. Green Bull is still, it's an admiral, dude. He captured Weevil. He took out King and Queen. Snap says, maybe just me asking after every Dorge cast. Okay. Sheriff Lafitte says, do you think Shanks will still be on Elbaf when the Strahds visit? He mentions to his allies that he needs to go, and Bartos still has to be dealt with. I don't know if he's going to go deal with Bartholomew. I like to believe... If Shanks isn't Elbaf... Maybe the Strahds arrive on Elbaf, and then Shanks returns, but it'd be kind of crazy if we get the Elbaf arc with no Shanks. That'd just be so disappointing. Remix King says, I'm trying out a new format for the Pokemon Adventure section of your stream. Any feedback would be great. What? He sent me a form. Okay, let's take a look at this. So for those of you who don't know, I'm currently reading Pokemon Adventures. It is my favorite manga of all time. It won the best manga of all time poll, which is why I'm reading it. And I think it's a really special series. So now I'm being quizzed just because he needs to confirm that I read it for some reason. What 3 Pokemon did Red use to fight Eevee that Team Rocket did experiments on? What's an Eevee? Not that wait. An Eevee is a... Eevee. It's like a squirrel thing, right? Yeah. Remember, hint. I got a hint. Remember the Gen 1 Eevee... This is a typo. Okay. Krabby, Diglett, and Swar. I recognize these... Wait, Pika, Butterfree, and Matcha. This one's racist. This one seems like a gag. I recognize these Pokemon best. Alright. Okay, view score? I get a score? What's my score? What? Oh, no, it's a 0%. Oh, no. That was the first one. I picked 2. Shit. What the... Okay, you guys all saw, though. I picked the first one correctly, right? Initially, I had it right. My memory failed me, man. Initially, I had it right. I feel like we should go off my first response. Come on. Never second guess yourself. Okay. Yeah, moving along. Guys, let's get the stream likes at 300. Snap says, have you started on Kingdom yet? No, but I am going to start now because I finished Dark Souls 3. So, I mean, like, when you have free time, like, your own leisure time, you're just, you're just your own leisure time. You're not working. You're not doing anything social, etc., right? You've only got so much leisure time. I don't have that much leisure time in general. So there's only so much room for what you do. Like, what's your go-to thing? Are you reading something? Are you watching something? In the last 3 months, I've finished Sekiro, Dark Souls 1, and Dark Souls 3. And over the process of this, I think I've realized why it is best for me not to play video games, because they just suck up your time, right? They're addicting, especially these games. They're really, really good. I'm going to take a break after I finished Dark Souls 3. I'm going to take a break. The one thing I am thinking of doing, though, is just for fun streams, right, is doing a Sekiro playthrough for the alternate... Well, there's three endings you can get in one route, and one alternate ending that I have not gotten, which is the Shura ending. So I'm thinking maybe I'll just do a New Game Plus of that, stream that, play that or something. But that'll only be on stream. That's something I've thought about. But in general, I'm like, okay, those games, they took up a lot of my free time in the last 3 months, my personal leisure time. I'm not going to play another video game for a while. Let me give myself some time to read shit, Let me read Kingdom and stuff. See, Elden Ring is what I would play next, but Elden Ring is so... It's not that I don't want to play another one of those games. It's just that I've hit a good stopping point, right? I finished the Dark Souls series. I played Sekiro. Bloodborne is on PlayStation. I can't play that. Elden Ring is a huge game. That's going to be tremendous time commitment. I'm like, okay, I will get to these games at some point. Not right now. Grizzly Adams says, been rewatching Alabasta. Koza is low-key a really dope character in my opinion. Yeah, Koza's an interesting character. You know what an interesting thing is to me is that Koza's a character that it makes almost no sense why he's not really, really strong. The reason I say this is because generally he's about the strength, as far as we can tell, a normal dude. You know what I mean? And in general, very strong-willed characters like a Koza, that's reflected in them being physically strong, right? It's the same way Wiper is very strong. Kiros is very strong, right? It's rare that you have a character like Koza. Oda does it more with women. So like Vivi is, she's not a very strong character, even though she's very strong-willed. But that's just because that's just One Piece. It's just the way it is. But Koza's rare in that he's a dude in One Piece that has a very strong will. Actually got together this entire united most of Alabasta under his flag, essentially, right? Led the whole rebellion. The Alabasta rebellion had some million people or something. He's in many ways he's a greater leader than Kinemon, Momonosuke, etc., right? Like Koza's an absolute nobody. His story is very interesting. He's an absolute nobody, just a random commoner. And even as a child, the main dynamic that he had with Vivi was that Koza was the leader of the little kids group that Vivi met up with and grew up with, and Vivi actually learned a lot about leadership from following Koza. So Koza's actually a kind of individual that's just rare in One Piece in that clear leadership abilities. What he did for a commoner who had absolutely no royal title or anything of significance to his name, the way that he was able to shape the nation, the amount of people he was able to bring under his flag, the strength of will that he showed over the course of the entire arc. It's weird that he's just a normal dude, right? That just doesn't normally happen in One Piece. So I don't know. I guess it's just the way it is. I wish Pell had actually died and Koza had gotten his Devil Fruit. Pell dying would have made Alabasta, it would have elevated Alabasta for sure, in my opinion. Because if you go back and read Alabasta, I really think that the Pell sacrifice scene is, on its own, is one of the best scenes in all of Alabasta, if it had actually happened. I think that the dialogue that goes with it, about him being the guardian spirit of Alabasta, etc., I think that actually is really, really strong. I do think that Pell's sacrifice would have been, one of the best scenes in Alabasta, for sure. At the moment, it's the worst scene in Alabasta, but it might have actually been one of my, I'm not gonna say like favorite scenes in One Piece, but one of my many favorite moments in One Piece, if it had actually happened, you know? Like, I think that if Pell had died in Alabasta there, I would view that scene as similar to Yasue's death in Wano, in terms of how I regard it, which is a minor character. We don't know much about them, but they get a tremendous amount of character and a decent amount of emotion out of them through their sacrifice in the one scene that we do get out of them. So one of the better moments in One Piece, for sure, if it had actually happened. Grizzly Adams has been rewatching. Oh, no, we covered this. Wrench Dodger 2000 says you should play Elden Ring. It's pretty good and DLC coming soon. Yeah, I know Elden Ring is great. A lot of people say that Elden Ring is just, better than Dark Souls or Dark Souls 3. So I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that better is subjective, etc. Wanty says, do you think Manga Morj will be bigger than Mr. Morj? If I grind it, yes, because I already see there that the videos I do on that channel have more potential to blow up than on Morj, because it can just reach a bigger audience. So because on that channel, you guys would be surprised, on that channel it's more hit or miss though. So on that channel though, I've only put out 3 videos, right? 10K subscribers, but the JoJo's video I did is already it hit like 130K or something like that. I don't even know what it's at right now, but it's just continually climbing. So it's already significantly higher than you would get for that sub count. The Chainsaw Man video I did, and this is the one that's the most heartbreaking because that's the one I put the most effort into. The Chainsaw Man video I did was on pace to be easily going up like well over 100K. It was just skyrocketing basically, and then it got age restricted. It was actually doing even better than the JoJo's video is currently doing. So that's a shame because that's a video that was just exponentially growing, and then it just got cut short, half grown. And I have high hopes for the Berserk video that's upcoming. The Manga Morj, the tricky thing is that the time balance, right? Because I still have to upkeep this channel. I still have to do my outside stuff, and then I'm still trying to work on Manga Morj stuff. So it's just tricky. If I committed to just Manga Morj, it would probably do better overall. But I'm not going to do that right now, or even for like that's just not a thing, you know. But the potential is higher. Leo Rector says, I guess Usopp is a reach, but Zoro versus Green Bull hype is so dead. I would agree. Tom says, showed my girlfriend the Usopp versus Chu fight and was reminded of the tension in the arc. I agree. Luffy's drowning, Sanji's stuck in the water, and Zoro's half dead. Yeah, Arlong Park had good tension, for sure. Like, it really felt as though the way the characters were acting was very much, we're towards the latter half especially, we're pretty much fucked. We're barely getting by every step of the way. The only chance we have in hell is if we're able to get Luffy out. Otherwise, we're all just going to die here. Because there's even a dramatic scene which is basically Nami's... everybody's helpless, right? Nobody can do anything against Arlong. Luffy's still stuck. And then Arlong tells Nami, okay, you've got a choice right now. Either you can keep betting on these guys, or you could choose to die. And Nami has an internal struggle, and she's like, no, I have to believe in them. Even though everything looks and everyone feels as though they're pretty much down and out, she's like, no, I gotta believe in them. So she asks the entire village, hey, are you all willing to die with me? And they're all like, yeah, let's do it. So they basically go all in on, okay, you know what? We're just gonna die believing in Luffy. And then I think a chapter or two later, they get Luffy out. But the tension is very, very high. By the way, that's not the same as the samurai at the end of Wano being like, hey, Onigashima's gonna fall and we'll die. You guys okay with that? Because them dying was basically the meaning of Kaido being defeated. So they're all like, fuck yeah, let's all die as long... Like, they never doubted in their heads that Luffy's gonna win or lose. They just heard that, hey, when Luffy wins, you all are probably gonna die too. And they're like, we don't care, we're samurai. We don't give a fuck about that. So that's not the same thing nearly. Nami's was like, despite the fact that everything looks like we've basically lost... Are you willing to still believe, you know, to the point of death, that Luffy's going to be able to get out of this and turn things around? And even though, like, you get a good scene for Nami right there where she doubts it for a second, but then she's like, no, you know what? I have to. Like, there's a good character moment that comes out of it. Really good moment for the village where she asks them if they're all on board. And just in general, it's a very dramatic scene. I'm a Pirate says, sorry to distract from the One Piece discussion, but I was wondering how much you like the Dark Souls 3 DLC. I have a lot of thoughts in general about the Dark Souls. I've only played the two games, right? I'm not going to play Dark Souls 2, but I have a lot of thoughts about the two games. I feel like I'll talk more in depth about it when I'm doing the Sekiro stream, which I am going to do at this point, just because I'm not going to pick up another game, so I can go back and play Sekiro, probably just for stream playthroughs and stuff like that. But yeah, I'll probably talk more during those because those will actually be like From Software related. But very briefly, I'll just say the Dark Souls 3 DLC was probably it exceeded expectations. I'm talking about the Ring City specifically. Although Ashes of Ariandel, I kind of assumed that it was an irrelevant DLC because I knew that it took place inside of a painting. I knew that before I started it. And I just thought it was almost a filler DLC because I'd already heard that the Ring City takes place at the end of the world, and there's like time shenanigans, and that it supposedly ends the entire story of Dark Souls, and that the finale takes place far in the future and things like that. So I wanted to get to that. I didn't really understand why. I was like, I'll do this painted world thing because obviously it's another DLC. I'm just going to do it. But I just assumed it would be like Ariamis, where it's not really related to the main plot. The way that those two DLCs connected to really close out the story of Dark Souls was so much better and so much more, I don't know, so much more satisfying than anything that the main game of Dark Souls 3 had kind of put forward. Because I enjoyed Dark Souls 3 quite a bit by the end. I had my mixed feelings about it throughout it, but by the end, especially after I beat the Nameless King and stuff like that, I was like, okay, this game is great. I did feel as though everything was pretty much a retread of Dark Souls 1 in terms of what I'm actually doing, the conflict that I'm trying to solve, etc. But the two DLCs, the vision for the future or the closure of the world and the idea of the answer kind of being, let's just keep creating a new world through this painting, right? And this is a more uh, more sort of human choice based continuation of a natural cycle that just feels much more organic and uh, I don't know, organic, and I guess um, yeah, just it feels like a better continuation than just this weird continuing cycle of fire and dark, etc. The idea of the painting just feels like a much more, it feels like an answer, I guess, to everything that's going on, right? Through all of this conflict that's just going to keep looping over and over again. The painting just feels like an answer, like a very, very beautiful poetic answer to all of it, right? And the way that you get the painting and the pigment of the painting and the closing of the idea of the dark soul, all of it really good. And that's none of that's to even talk about how crazy good the bosses Freed and Gale were, especially Gale, best boss fight, period. The Ring City in general was an amazing area, by far better than anything in the main game. Like everything from the Dreg Heap, and especially the final landscape where you fight Gale far in the future. That's, I don't know. I've got so much good shit to say about all of that. It's gonna lose people on this stream, so I'll save it for another one. But yeah, the 2 DLCs really put Dark Souls 3 over the top for me. No, we covered this. TomTom says, no, we covered this. Remix King says, in the feedback there's another link, please click it. What? I've already lost the original link. Where's the... I've closed it. Wowfell says, do you think the OP mangas... OP manga suffers from how Oda attempts to appeal to the norms and not around hardcore fans? I don't really know what that means. I don't really know what that means. Oda attempts to appeal to the normies and not around hardcore fans. I just don't know what that means. Are you saying that there's more? I'm sorry. Okay, I can try and guess at what you're saying here, but I don't want to misconstrue anything you're saying. Are you saying that Oda is going for more flashy stuff and hype scenes and hype stuff nowadays, I guess, than focusing on characters? And I just don't think... No, it's tricky because, okay, if I look at the Wano arc, right, I don't think that that's a case of trying to appeal to the normies, right? I think it's the other way, where I really don't think Oda... if I look at the Wano arc, I feel like that's a case of Oda just really wanting to write and flesh out, him just wanting to indulge in as many of his ideas as he has, no matter how big or small, in that, you know, he'll just write chapters dedicated to the Oniwa Banshu that none of us care about. He'll just dedicate chapters related to all sorts of random minor shit and introduce the heads of the 5 families and go into like a fight for Raizo, and he'll write a fight for Raizo and like Perospero versus Nekomamushi. Like, he will really indulge in all of these nitty gritty things, basically. I don't feel as though it's a case of Oda trying to appeal too much to any particular fan base, to be honest. I think Oda just wanted to write what Oda really wanted to write, which was all of these ideas that are coming into his head. Even if that, for better or worse, gets in the way of, I suppose, focusing on maybe some things that readers may care about more, such as the Straw Hats or something like that. And the Straw Hats getting elaborate storylines. If Oda wants to throw it in, he'll throw it in, and that's basically what it is. So I don't know. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I'm sure that there is also a mix of him wanting to indulge in his ideas as much as possible, and then the reality of having to sell copies, right? Editors, publishers, etc. And so the push to probably include in more hype scenes or hype events whenever possible. So I imagine there's some balancing force in between there. Sheriff Lafitte says, very random idea, but what do you think of Kid becoming the protector of Shanks' allies after Shanks gets got by Blackbeard? The protector... Oh, that would be a cool turnaround. I actually really like that idea. That's a great idea. That's a really, really great idea. I think that would be a very, very interesting take for his character. I like that a lot. Cleanly Murph, welcome to the Yonko. Thanks for joining. You can get access to that podcast we were talking about earlier. If you're... Yeah. If you're interested. Wait, what's this argument going on in the comments about souls? I want to see. Someone named Cheesehead is arguing with somebody. What's going on? The parrying timing is so bad that it's really hard to utilize, and more importantly, some of the bosses are too cracked to the point of being unfair. There's barely any downtime between attacks. We're talking about Dark Souls 3. Yeah. So Dark Souls 3, I never. Despite the fact that I'm completely addicted to Elden Ring, it definitely had some problems that weren't /prevalent in Dark Souls 1 and 3. Yeah, I've heard a lot of people complain about Elden Ring bosses. You just see it because me, when I'm playing games, I just like seeing discussion around those games. If I finish a boss or an area or whatever, I will go back and watch YouTube videos of other people doing it, or YouTube playthroughs, or stuff like that, right? Just because it's fun. After I beat a boss or an area, I'll go to Reddit and see what other people felt about it and everything like that. So a thing that I did pick up on was people in general complaining about Elden Ring bosses and how they weren't as well thought out as Dark Souls 3 bosses. I don't know about that. I'll find out whenever I go play Elden Ring. I thought that Dark Souls 3 bosses, in the latter half of the game, it had a very mixed bag in bosses, but its good bosses were really... It had a lot of good bosses, and I think that it had, 3 overall phenomenal bosses. Just amazing. Like, when I first beat the Nameless King, I was legitimately thinking that might be the best boss fight ever. And I've played Sekiro, I've played Ishin, right? Given some time, that might have been recency bias. Given some time, I don't know if I'd put Nameless King above Ishin. But Ishin is to be clear, let me say this really quickly, right? To be clear, when I say the best boss fight, Ishin is still the best gameplay-wise boss fight. Ishin, the final boss of Sekiro, is the gameplay-wise the best boss fight. It is the most fun to play, the most complex moveset, everything. Complex moveset, speed, patterns, of everything, the adrenaline, it's so rewarding to play, right? The gameplay is the best, right? And Sekiro's combat system is just better. However, that's not everything that there is to a boss fight. Nameless King was just... Also, for Dark Souls 3 combat system, right, it felt like that was the peak of how good it could get, and just the spectacle, the build-up, the arena, the boss design, the effects, just everything. It was so cinematic. It felt more epic than Ishin's, right? So when I beat Nameless King, I was like, that might have been better than Ishin. Then I was like, I don't know about that. And then after that, I played Freed, and I was like, holy shit, that might be better than Nameless King. And then I beat Gale. And Gale, I'm just like, well, that was clearly better than Nameless King and Freed. So it's like, Dark Souls 3 had... I feel like Sekiro had overall the best quality of bosses, right? But Dark Souls 3 has 3 outliers. It has 3 bosses that are way better than the rest of the bosses in the game. That's Gale, Nameless King, and Freed. And I put them all in the same tier as Ishin. I could make an argument for any one of those 4 being my favorite boss, basically. Maybe it's Gale just because it concludes the Dark Souls series. It takes everything that Nameless King had in terms of how epic it was, the feel, the atmosphere, the arena, etc., and the music, scales it all up. Gale as a character, the fact that you're fighting against the Dark Soul at the end of a series called Dark Soul, I don't know, it's so, I've got so much I could say about it, but we're going to keep it One Piece related here for the moment. I'll talk more about this when I do a stream of a Sekiro, basically, or something like that, probably next week. I don't know. Maybe recency bias, but right now I'm saying Gale's my favorite. Anyway, I don't know about Elden Ring bosses, though. Also, I couldn't parry in Dark Souls 3. I probably could if I spent enough time, learning it, but Dark Souls 1 parrying I got down after a little bit. And then by the end of the game, I felt like I was really good at parrying in Dark Souls. Dark Souls 3, I did try early on. to just practice against the Knights and get pairing down. And I kind of did, but not enough that I felt comfortable just doing it for the rest of the game. So the rest of the game I was just rolling. I never used a shield in Dark Souls 3. I just two-handed a katana. And I know I fucking found out way later that two-handing isn't even that good for it's better if you're using a strength weapon or something like that, but it doesn't matter. Okay, Daniel Allen says, you once said you don't like Gon, but can you appreciate what was done with his character in Chimera? But you appreciate what was done with Chimera in the Chimera Ant arc. Could you elaborate briefly? Sure. I'll try and keep it very brief, but that's a question that it's hard to be brief on. For me, Gon just a lot about what you like or don't like for a character is how much you find. A lot of it just comes down to how much you enjoy their personality. For me, Gon feels like it's almost Luffy-esque, right? Almost Luffy-esque in that you've got this very cheerful, optimistic, naive, bright-eyed kid with a knack for adventure, I suppose, and challenging himself, etc., going out into the world. But for me, he lacks a lot of what Luffy does. In his day-to-day regular moments, I find Luffy a lot funnier, and I think that a lot of that comes from Oda just being inherently a lot better at writing comedy and off-the-cuff comedy than Togashi. Luffy in general, I think Oda is able to come up with a lot more unpredictable moments. I think Gon is a character that is, in fact, almost... He's not predictable. That's unfair to say. There's plenty of moments that surprise me with Gon, I suppose, but... a lot of it almost comes from he's too wholesome and pure in terms of how he does a lot of things, right? And a lot of it is the emphasis on the pure simple-mindedness of how he thinks and his values and stuff like that. With Luffy, I think moments where his values and such come out are generally a lot more powerful and dramatic, and I think used more rarely. And I think that's what makes Oda's able to craft much more memorable scenes when we see a certain side of Luffy come out, such as, you know, when he's having the argument with Arlong in Nami's room or something like that, or having the angry final showdown with Crocodile down below, and he's explaining to Crocodile what Crocodile doesn't understand and things like that. I think that Oda's able to hit a lot, like, Oda's able to use Luffy. There's so many ways that Oda's able to use Luffy, I feel, consistently that just feel as though, to me, they're gone, but much, much, much more likable, much, much more fun to read, chapter to chapter, arc to arc. Be that in terms of comedy, it's much more fun to read. Be that in terms of crafting really iconic, unpredictable moments, like Luffy punching the Celestial Dragon or shooting down the world government flag. Oda just has a knack for thinking of things like that. And then when you come down to the serious side of Luffy, when he's expressing his values and things like that, again, in an Arlong scene or any sort of like special Luffy dialogue moment that he has with a villain or something like that, I think that the wording and personality that comes out of Luffy in those moments is just a lot stronger, right? In my opinion. I think that it just makes for a lot more memorable moments in One Piece. Whereas with Gon, a lot of it feels almost generic. This is all up to the Chimera Ant arc, right? I think a lot of it changes with the Chimera Ant arc because it flips so much of it on its head. And I think that that's a very interesting direction that separates Gon from Luffy in a million ways and makes Gon a much more unique character, right? And I think what's done with this character is phenomenal, right? And it's very different from any other shonen MC that I can think of off the top, right? Off the top. But Gon day to day, I just find so much of his dialogue a little too childish, motivations too naive, optimistic, too basic. He's not that funny. He's it's just it's almost too painfully wholesome in many ways and pure in many ways throughout the first part of the story. He has moments where he does cool, reckless things, but again, I think Oda is just much better at writing sort of really reckless but iconic moments for Luffy that stand out. Whereas with Gon, is something that reckless that he does is, you know, he'll throw himself all the way off a ship to go grab somebody's hand in the first or second chapter or something, and then Kurapika and Leorio have to grab his feet to save him, but that's not iconic in the way that Luffy punching the Celestial Dragon is. And a lot of that just comes down to the scenes that are written for the character. I think Gon's are a lot more generic, in my opinion. All the way up to Chimera arc. Bassem El Madawi says, I had a theory about the difference between Mihawk and Shanks. Alright, everyone, buckle up. Swordsmen fight with honor, but there's no honor in pirate fights. What do you think? I just don't. There's, Mihawk's a pirate, so I don't really know what to say. Also, I think that Shanks is, just the manner in which Shanks fights, I don't get the sense that he wins through cheating, or if that's what you're implying or something like that, because we haven't seen much of how Shanks fights, but a lot of it seems to be Shanks just seems to be a extreme powerhouse in terms of hockey, right? From his very first introduction or hint of his abilities, which is him walking onto Whitebeard's ship, the main thing that's emphasized is just the level of power that he radiates, right? Very next thing he does is split the sky. When he's scaring off Green Bull, it's just a tremendous amount of hockey that he's just radiating, right? Divine Departure is a huge outburst of hockey. Shanks stops Akainu straight up. A lot of what Shanks does throughout the story feels more he just feels like a powerhouse, you know what I mean, especially in terms of hockey usage. So I've never gotten the sense that Shanks is maybe beating Mihawk because he's not beating Mihawk in a duel or anything like that, right? That's not what I'm saying, but I never got the sense that Shanks' fighting style is maybe cheating or something like that, even though, yeah, everything goes with, with pirate fights or whatever. Remix King sent me the link. Okay, hold on. I gotta vet this Remix King, just because I don't know what, okay. Oh, it's a link. It's a link to Pokemon Adventures. Alright, let me just show you guys what I'm seeing. So, hold on. So, we get this question. What 3 Pokemon did Red use to fight Eevee that Team Rocket did experiments on? Naturally, the answer is Krabby, Diglett, and Suar. Of course. Let's just check what I got. I got 100%, as usual. And then, let's just take a look at what Pokemon Adventures is about. Not that I haven't read it before. Is this really the art style? Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. You really can just publish anything, huh? I wonder if I could draw this. And they make fun of Oda for his female character designs. Okay. Let's just take a quick look. What's the deal? Oh my god, this is how they draw Machamp. I know it's one of the things, right? There's like Machamp, Machop. Which one's... Yeah, Machamp. Dude, why does... This doesn't look like... Oh my god. Hold on. Look at this. I can believe that the story is good. But I just don't know if I'd be able to look at this all the time, It's just doesn't quite look the same, Something's just a little bit off here. Okay, that lazy idiot. I trained his Pokemon to be twice the fighters, but he didn't do a thing with mine. Machoke wasn't able to evolve until Red had him for a while. This is a Machamp, you idiot. Unless you're saying... Never mind, I get it. Okay. I'm missing... Okay. Oh my god, what... Wait, this is what a drawn Pokemon battle looks like? Oh my god, this looks... Oh no. This image just looks It looks weird, man. I don't know. Oh no. Okay. All right. Enough Pokemon adventures for one day. That was quite the adventure. Okay. Back to this stuff. Guys, let's get the stream likes to 400. Big Bro Cook says, do you think a fan movement for a new official translation from Viz once the series wraps could work, or do you think it's unrealistic? I think that is extremely unrealistic. I think that is wildly unrealistic, because the only way something like that would work is if Viz felt as though they would, or whoever the publishers are, right, would feel like they would make a ton more money reprinting all the One Piece volumes, which I doubt is the case. It's just because retranslating all that is a lot of work. Daniel Allen says, after Wano, your faith in the ending of the story was shaken. Has it been restored with the recent stuff we've been seeing? Yeah, I mean, I think that at the moment, my faith is in that everything from now to the end of One Piece is going to be very exciting. That's what I'll say. And I don't think my faith was ever shaken in the sense that, I still believe that Oda has all of the most important Straw Hat character moments, etc., in the works. My faith is only... I keep saying my faith was shaken. Yeah, my only thing that I don't know, there's different things. I feel as though the stakes are about to get higher, so I feel as though tension is going to be a big thing in the final saga, considering the way that Im is being portrayed and the stuff that he can do. I think that it is less likely that Oda is going to overload on storylines and characters that we don't care about, which was the thing in Wano, because at this point, I think we do generally care about pretty much all characters that are involved, right? Like Shanks, Kid, Law, Blackbeard, things like that. Vegapunk's a tricky situation because we're getting partway through Egghead Island, and I was starting to feel a little bit as though, okay, maybe we're seeing the same cycle again where we're having to learn about all 6 Vegapunks, and this is kind of not the most... even in an arc with only one other character, it turned into an arc with 7 other characters, basically, and we don't care about a lot of these other characters. But the twist with York and everything like that makes me actually excited for and happy that Oda did the setup he did. So I think generally I get the sense that we're paring things down. I think that the potential for high stakes is still there. I think at the very least One Piece is set to be very exciting consistently with all of the crazy shit we've been waiting on happening week to week from here to the end of the story. And lastly, I would say that whether or not we get the great character stuff that we've always enjoyed in the story regarding the Straw Hats, that's to be seen, but I still have confidence that that'll happen, you know? Behenort, thanks. About a year ago, I shilled you the Owl House, and you said you would check it out on Disney+. To not be annoying, I decided to wait a year to remind you about it. No pressure, just asking because it ends this week. What is it, the Owl House? I'm not going to lie, Behenort. Not only did I forget, I feel like I've never even heard this name before, Owl House. Has it really been a year? Are you sure that you told me about this? I believe you. What is it about? Let me look up a quick summary. What is Owl House about? Because I'm not seeing any owls. The series centers around... Hold on. This is the Wikipedia summary. The series centers around Luz Noceda, a 14-year-old Dominican-American human girl who accidentally stumbles upon a portal to the demon realm, like it, where she arrives at the Boiling Isles, an archipelago formed from the remains of a dead titan. That's actually kind of interesting, and befriends the rebellious witch Ida Clothorn, also known as the Owl Lady, and her adorable demon housemate King. Despite not having magical abilities, Luz pursues her dream of becoming a witch by serving as Ida's apprentice at the Owl House and ultimately finds a new family in an unlikely setting. In the second season, Luz attempts to return to the human realm, Ida tries to confront her curse, and King searches for the truth about his past while contending with the Boiling Issue's ruler, Emperor Belos, who's preparing for the mysterious Day of Unity. Overarching plot. In the finale specials... Oh, no. This is spoilers now. Okay, that seems interesting. How long are episodes? I'm probably not going to watch it, but if it's on Disney Plus, I could watch it at any time, right? Just because it ends soon doesn't mean that I have to watch it soon, right? Oh, it's a very recent show. Started 2020. I'm going to assume episodes are like 20 minutes. I'll think about it. GDN says, in Elden Ring, summons seem to be intended since they don't affect boss stats like HP, hence longer combos since you're expected to split aggro. I don't like that. I never summoned in Dark Souls or Dark Souls 3 at all. Like, literally never summoned in Dark Souls or Dark Souls 3. Just because that's just, I don't know. It's just not... I like the idea that I'm fighting it and beating it myself. Not just gameplay-wise, but also just mentally, story-wise, my sense of immersion. It's almost more that than anything. Yeah, so... I'll have to see how summons... Because they're called Spirit Ashes in Elden Ring, right? Right? It's the same thing. I hear people say Spirit Ashes a lot, so... Like, did you use Spirit Ashes or not, right? Yeah, Companions, Spirit Ashes. I don't know. Because Elden Ring, is it just straight up too hard if you don't use those? Is it just too hard if you don't use those? That's my big question, because, I mean, I guess too hard is subjective, but, I'll say this, like, in Dark Souls 3, right? Nameless King took me... Dark Souls 3 earlier bosses actually took me longer, which is Pontiff took me over 2 hours, and Abyss Watchers, I complained to you guys on stream, I could not beat them, period, for I don't know how many hours, because I was playing, I gave up after a bit, I picked it up another day, and it still took me another hour and a half. After that, I kind of figured out the game, I just figured out all the differences, the things I was doing wrong, and I was trying to play it like Dark Souls. I just figured out, I realized a lot, right? But after that, Pontiff still took me 2.5 hours. I don't consider those the hardest bosses anymore, because that was just me getting past the relearning curve or whatever. So let's talk about the later bosses, right? Nameless King took me 2 hours. Everything else took me less than that. So Gale was a bit under 2 hours. Gale was somewhere between an hour and a half to 2 hours. Sister Freed was exactly an hour and 40 minutes. Midir was, I think, a little bit less time than Gale. And those are pretty much the only hard bosses in the game, in my opinion, after Pontiff. Are Elden Ring bosses harder than those? Because if they are, then that's going to be brutal. Like, that's going to be brutal. If Elden Ring has a bunch of bosses harder than Nameless King, then I don't know. I would still want to do it without the Spirit Ashes, but maybe I'll just tell myself that Spirit Ashes are supposed to be part of the game. I don't know. I'll see. You say they don't change boss stats like HP. I know in Dark Souls, if you summon like a friend for co-op, doesn't that change the boss stats or something? Surreal Soviet says, hi Marj, my 2 cents on Shanks versus Mihawk. In 1023, King admits he's not a swordsman because he uses everything in Dark Souls, if you summon at all, that changes the boss stats, right? From my understanding of how people are comparing summons to Spirit Ashes. Like, that's what you're saying, right? So in Dark Souls, if you summon, the game is kind of punishing you for it, but with Elden Ring, it's not. Is that what you guys are saying? I don't know. Yeah, just tell me if I know that Millennia is one boss in Elden Ring that everybody talks about. I get that one is probably harder than anything else, right? But let's discount her. Let's say she's an outlier. Are the other bosses in Elden Ring harder than Nameless King, Gale? I actually thought Gale was harder than Nameless King, although I beat Gale in less time. Like, my view of what hard means is like what difficult means in terms of it's not based on exactly how much time it took. That's just a big part of it. Because I don't think Abyss Watchers are that difficult now. I was just being stupid, if that makes sense. So Gale, I think, is the hardest boss in the game. He was the most difficult boss for me. A lot of people complain about Midir. I don't think Midir is that difficult of a boss compared to some of the other ones. I mean, he's probably one of the hardest, but it's really just a long health bar. But if you play it very safe, it's easy. I don't know. I think different people have different opinions on that. Because I definitely think Gale is harder than Sister Freed. But a lot of people are like, no, Freed's the hardest boss and then Midir's even harder than, or like either Freed or Midir are the hardest boss, or Nameless King. And I actually put Gale above all three of those. Like if I had to rate what I think is the hardest, I'd say Gale number 1, maybe Nameless, then Nameless King and Freed tied maybe, and then Midir. I don't know, but I think Gale is a step up from the rest in my opinion, at least to me. Surreal Soviet says, hi Marj, my 2 cents on Shanks versus Mihawk. In 1023, King admits he's not a swordsman because he uses everything at his disposal to fight. I get that, but the debate comes down to what Zoro cares about. So the question is, would Zoro feel satisfied if it's the end of the story and Shanks is still walking around? Well, Shanks will probably be dead, but you guys get what I'm saying? Zoro makes it his goal. Like, Zoro wants to beat King. Largely, like, Zoro cares about the fact that King has a sword. You get what I'm saying? Just because King cheats with a sword doesn't change the fact that Zoro cares about beating King, partly at least because he has a sword, right? Do you really think that, the man that Mihawk used to have duels with, legendary duels with, if Shanks is better than Mihawk in a sword duel, that Zoro wouldn't want to fight him, or that Zoro would feel satisfied completing his dream without that? Again, that's not to say that Shanks is not as strong as Mihawk. I'm just saying that when we talk about who's stronger as a swordsman, I just think who would win in a sword duel. So they're both using swords, right? They're both using swords. They're only allowed to use swords. That's what matters. I think that in that case, Mihawk has to be stronger in that context, right? I Can Drive says, did you hear about the Hunter x Hunter taken out of a Shonen Jump list? I thought I saw some update about Tagashi saying that he's back to writing or something for Hunter x Hunter, so I don't know how much to weigh that. Abdrizak M says, hey Morj, love your channel. Thank you. Would One Piece be the same if Luffy killed his enemies? You can call me Jimmy. I know you'll butcher my name. Lol, fuck. I'll call you Jimmy from now on. Would One Piece be the same if Luffy killed his enemies? I think I really like the tone that One Piece has set as is. I genuinely like the fact that Luffy and the Straw Hats don't kill their enemies. I really, really do. And I actually like the fact quite a bit that death is not prevalent in One Piece. Because One Piece is not a series that I go... The feelings that I get from reading One Piece are genuine... For me, it is the most pure, distilled sense of shonen joy, which is you get really dramatic character writing, really dramatic, powerful, feel-good moments. You get the sense of hero overcoming terrible odds, terrible injustice, terrible villains, and you get the sense of happily ever after with a big stamp of just sheer freedom and joy, and everything is sort of right with the world at the end of every arc, at the end of every island. You get all of that. If characters died frequently throughout One Piece, that would really throw that off. If Luffy was this cold-blooded pirate killing other people, I think that would really throw that off. There's just this sort of warm feel to One Piece that comes with that not being a prevalent part in the story. All that being said, my big complaint has always been Oda writing, not even fake out deaths. I talked about this in the whole video about why I don't like fake deaths in One Piece, right? It's not the fake out deaths. It's when Oda tries to do both, which is trying to cash in on writing a dramatic death scene, right? If you do a scene where like, oh no, character goes off the cliff, what happened to them or something like that, and then 5 chapters later it's revealed that they're alive, I'm actually okay with that. It's like a little cheap when it happens over and over, but I don't care. If you do a scene where a character's head is, like, a character is shot, and then you get a full chapter devoted to flashbacks and characters crying and like mourning the character and like using that emotion to fuel the drama of the next several chapters or something like that, and then 20 chapters later reveal the character never actually died, that's what I view as cheap. So I don't like Oda doing dramatic death scenes that are not real, because that's the cheapest type of writing, period, to me, because then you're doing what no other respectable writer ever does, right? It's just not a thing that you see in any other... I can't think of any other respectable writer that does it. You're closer to writing like Fairy Tail when you do that than writing like an actual, great, a great author or something, right? It's not a thing that anybody else does, but Oda does it very casually and callously throughout the story. And readers lots of times forgive him for lots of not for. I'm saying it to like like obviously it's his story. He can do whatever he wants. Who are we to forgive him or anything like that? But readers don't seem to mind when if you took this outside of the One Piece fandom and showed it to like a literary critic or something like that, they'd be like, this is literally like the worst shit that you could ever possibly do. Writing dramatic death scenes that are not real, right? So that's my biggest problem with that in One Piece. I don't care if Oda does death fakeouts, but when you milk a death scene, like something like Pell, that's really, 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 really bad. And that's just something that sullies so much of how good, an arc like Alabasta could be. I basically have to ignore the Pell scene to rate Alabasta because it's that bad, That's my opinion on it. I do think, even that aside, I think that the frequency of deaths in One Piece is fine too. Like, Ace and Whitebeard died. They died in an arc that is supposed to be really tragic. It is the one arc so far in One Piece that is not supposed to provide that good, wholesome, happily ever after feeling, so it makes sense in that arc. But I don't really mind if no other character dies in an arc like Enies Lobby or Alabasta or Dressrosa. I do mind when Oda does those dramatic fake death scenes like with Pell. I mind that. And then I do mind if there's an arc like Wano where Oda keeps on playing up the idea that characters are going to die. That's a very prominent idea, and death is a very prominent theme throughout the story. When you're doing that, when we know that that's not something that you're going to deliver on, then that kind of cheapens the experience when no prominent characters actually die. You know what I'm saying? Bobby Wellington, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 6 months. What do you think the arc structure of Elbaf will be like? Will it be the typical go to New Island and confront the big bad, or something else? I still feel like Elbaf will be a shorter arc. Simply because Egghead Island's already shaping up to be longer, and I feel like the only real bad guy on Elbaf is gonna be Shanks. I don't think it'll have a big bad. So I like to believe that it'll be a shorter, more character-focused arc. I like to believe that whatever conflict they have with Shanks, they'll be able to get some side development of characters like maybe Loki through that. But I like to believe that it'll just generally be a tighter arc with fewer characters. So I can't predict too much more about Elbaf beyond that. I still think Davy backfight between the Straw Hats and the Shanks Pirates is still in the works and possible. I think Davy backfight provides a great potential arc structure for that, just because you kind of have main events, which are games, and then in between games you can get some character stuff, character interactions, and kind of build the plot of the arc. You know what I'm saying? KGM78, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 6 months. Elden Ring difficulty really depends on what build you're doing. To be fair, this is the same in Dark Souls, with strength builds being the easiest. So I just want to do pure dex again. Honestly, I just like playing with katanas. So I kind of just want to pick up, and I know Uchi Katana is the Chaos Blade in there? I want to play with either the Chaos Blade or Uchi Katana again in Elden Ring. I don't know. I'll find. I know Uchi Katana is in there. I was thinking I'm just gonna play with Uchi Katana, and that's pretty much it. But I also know that there's more stuff in Elden Ring, like there's more shit, like I know the stat things. It goes beyond just strength, dex, and stuff. Like I never touched intelligence in Dark Souls. I never leveled that up in Dark Souls 3 or anything like that. Like the magic based stuff, I just don't touch. So I just want to play Dex again. I'll see if that's doable. The Outback Pandas, thank you very much for the 10. Got an essay due at midnight, so I won't be here tonight, but have a good one nonetheless. Hate April Fool's, BTW. Time zones rack it out from a manageable 24 hours to more like 36 hours instead. That's the one thing. April Fool... If we all just had one day, which is clearly April Fool's, that'd be great. But just the way that the internet works, I'll wake up to something on Twitter that's maybe a day early or a day late or something like that, and it's still some part of the world. You know what I'm saying? It feels like March 31st, some shit's already happening, and then I have to remember, okay, tomorrow's April Fool's, or it's already April Fool's in some parts for some people. It kind of ruins the fun of the day a little bit when, it's stretched out over some period of time. I agree with you on that. Tom says, can you touch on the evolution of Usopp's moments, fighting for his dreams, to fighting for Luffy's dreams, to sniping since he can't fight, to he's the only one who can fight Perona, to fighting for strangers. I'll touch on it a little bit. I've talked about this, I feel like, in past streams and in past videos. So, we're going to go through this really, really quickly, off the top of my head, right? I think each major fight or close to fight that Usopp has, he has something like this, right? So, against Chu, okay, when he fought in Syrup Village, that was him fighting for his little hometown and everything like that. So it was definitely very brave, but that was him fighting a battle that it was everything that he cared about right there, right? Once he sets out to be a brave warrior of the sea or whatever, the fight versus Chu is the first time that he's fighting a battle for his own sense of pride, as I'm a pirate, I'm one of these guys, I can't go back to hang out with them, laugh with them, party with them, etc., unless I'm able to stand up and fight for the sake of what they're fighting for, the same way that they do, right? So Usopp could have weaseled out of the fight. That was a very important thing in the Chu fight. Usopp could have escaped. He could have weaseled out. He really didn't need to do that fight, but he did that fight for himself and his own pride, right? It's actually kind of similar to Chopper versus Gedatsu, although that was a little bit different. That was also another proving myself moment, proving I'm a big boy pirate now. If you go back and read the Chopper versus Gedatsu fight, that's what Chopper's struggling with there. So I like that little parallel, especially because if you look at Usopp versus Chu and Chopper versus Gedatsu, the fight sandwiched in the middle for both of them is both of them versus the Mr. Four pair, which is kind of cool. But anyway, the Mr. Four pair, so it's kind of cool because like Usopp learns certain things and then he passes down certain messages to Chopper, who is too naive to know that Usopp's just figuring it out as he goes too. But that's funny. Against the Mr. Four pair, again, yeah, it's fighting for your friends' dreams and everything like that. Then Enies Lobby versus what happened in Enies Lobby versus what happened with Perona was really interesting, because Enies Lobby was the arc that Usopp was feeling the most useless, because he's kind of breezed by up till now by getting through fights one way or another, but he's still not a capable combatant, and he's struggling at the beginning of the arc with him feeling like, he's useless, right? Everybody else in the crew is really, really good at something. Even Nami, who's not a good combatant, is maybe the best navigator in existence, right? So everybody else in the crew is really, really a beast in their own specific niche. Usopp is the only one that doesn't truly have a place. He's not the best sniper out there. He's failing as a shipwright, so the areas where he's lacking are also being played up more throughout the start of the Enies Lobby arc. He's not strong. He can't fix a ship. What's he really, really good for is kind of what he's struggling to figure out, right? The big lesson that's played up throughout that arc for Usopp is kind of understanding that what Sanji tells him, you just do what we can't do, right? You do what you can do, we'll do what you can't do. And the thing that's highlighted there is that you're not that good at combat. Leave Jaibura to me. You don't need to be the one to fight these guys, right? On the flip side, it parallels Luffy's journey throughout that arc, which is him learning more and more about his responsibility, which is that as the captain, you need to be the strongest, and you need to be able to beat anybody else that your crew can't beat, otherwise you'll lose them all. That's a recurring message throughout Enies Lobby. That's what his dialogue with Blueno explains. That's what his repeated dialogue with Lucci is. Luffy basically realizing, okay, these aren't just my friends. I'm the captain. I'm responsible for their well-being. I have to be able to beat anybody, otherwise they're basically fucked, right? So it's two things that are being played with that arc, right, on Usopp's side, and this is all in the Enies Lobby analysis, right? You guys can go check that out. But on Usopp's side, he's realizing, I don't need to be the strongest. I just need to be able to help in some way, right? And then Luffy realizing, I need to be the strongest, and I need to be able to win the fight that nobody else can win, because that's my job. So they're both realizing their roles in that sense. And then you get the next arc, which is Thriller Bark, where things are kind of flipped, where Enies Lobby, the whole point was that even though Usopp had so much focus throughout that arc, he's the only Straw Hat that doesn't get a fight, right? Robin too, but she's captive, so it doesn't count. But he's the only Straw Hat that doesn't get a fight, because the point is, that doesn't have to be your thing, right? You can snipe. You can do other things that can help. Thriller Bark, it's reversed in that Usopp, for the first time is now put in Luffy's position. It's like, all right, you learned your lesson in that sense. But now you're in Luffy's position where there's an opponent that nobody can beat. Luffy can't beat her. Zoro can't beat her. Sanji can't beat her. Frankie can't beat her. Nobody can beat her. Now you get the responsibility, and let's like you actually have to step up in a combat situation and be the person who can beat the enemy that nobody else can beat. It also helps that this is the first arc that Luffy is really, really sidelined, and so his crew have to do a lot of the work, taking out obviously all of Mori's subordinates, but then also fighting and holding off oars all by themselves for a long period of time before Luffy comes in. So, Thriller Bark was a nice flip on that. Dressrosa was the first arc that Usopp really plays the role of a hero. In that up till now, everything he's done has been first for his own hometown, then for himself, then for his crewmates and stuff like that. But Dressrosa was the first time he needed to be a hero for a bunch of people he didn't know. Just a kingdom, a random bunch of tontadas and stuff like that. Nobody would really, like, he doesn't really get anything out of saving them, right? He's not saving himself, he's not saving his friends. These are just strangers, but he comes back to save them anyway. That's the whole thing, as far as I've seen Usopp's growth so far. I think it's pretty good. I think that there's still so much potential for his character. The FPS Kings Gaming says, the first time I super chatted was to tell you, don't watch it, it's Reddit the show. What, the Owl House? Okay, we got 1 vote against, 1 vote for. Tuna Sub says, I'm sure Owl is good, regular show first though. I forgot about regular show. Maybe I'll watch it. These are all maybes. I don't know. Shoot. What did you say to call you? What was your name again? Let me see. This is that guy with the complicated name who said to call him something else. Let's take a look. Let's find his previous comment. Jimmy. All right, Jimmy says, let me make sure I didn't miss any other supers in the meantime. Yeah, I don't think I did. Jimmy says, Elden Ring is hard as fuck. Can't get past Godric. I believe it's hard, man. Wait, yeah, let me see what people are saying. Are people saying it's... Okay, they are if you don't summon. What does that mean? They are if you... Like, they're harder than... Are they harder than Gale, Nameless King, and Freed? Those are the main ones that I view as really hard in yeah, those are the ones that I viewed as really hard in Dark Souls 3. Nameless King, Gale, and Freed in some order. Gale first for me personally. For me, actually, it might be Gale, then Freed, then Nameless King. I don't know. I just know Midir is the easiest out of the 4 in my opinion. In my opinion. GDN says, Elden Ring is doable without summons, but there are some fights, think duo fights, where it's incredibly obvious that you're intended to summon. Okay. Duo fights I pretty much hate in every game. I just think it's... Not hate, but it's just... They're never fun initially. It can feel good when you beat them. I do like Ornstein and Smo, partly because everybody talked it up so much before I got there. You know what I mean? Like, I'm reading Reddit as I'm getting to Dark Souls areas, and people are like, wait till Ornstein and Smo. Wait till Ornstein and Smo. Oh, but they're the best boss fight in the game, but they're so hard, blah, 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 blah. So Anne Orlando is just so much fun, and you feel really good when you do beat them. But beyond that, generally, you're not ever like, oh boy, awesome. Like, I wasn't like, oh boy, I get to fight Sister Freed and Father Ariandel. Fucking amazing, you know? Daniel Hennington says first boss is harder than all 3. Are you kidding? That's losses. You don't have to fight them all low. No, but that's the fun. Like, the fun for me in these games is the sense of completion of each area, and doing each boss. Because otherwise, what else is there, really? So, and it's hard to find some of these fuckers in the Dark Souls games. So, like, Dark Souls 3, I looked up what are all the optional areas and bosses, because it's hard to find some of them. I would never have found. Who the fuck finds Archdragon Peak on accident? I would never in a million years have accidentally stumbled my way to Archdragon Peak. You have to do this whole. It's just. I mean, you don't have to do anything. It's just I wouldn't have made the connection that I need to go. I learned a gesture here. I need to go to this random spot and do it. I just wouldn't have made that connection, you know. But I did it because it's the fun of the game, I suppose. So, if I'm doing Elden Ring, I would want to do all bosses. In Sekiro, I will admit this. I did all bosses, all mini bosses, except the headless. Not the headless ape. I did the headless ape, you know, when he comes back with no head and his wife/girlfriend gorilla shows up. I'm talking about the headless, just the creepy motherfuckers. Everything is... I didn't do those just because you need divine confetti, or at least the fight's extremely stupid without divine confetti. It's just... I did it a couple... I know I could beat it. It's one of those where you know you can do it if you tried enough times or whatever. I just tried a few times. They killed me a few times. It killed me a few times, and I was just like, this just seems so not fun. The fact that I have to use up divine confetti, I've never had to do this for another boss where you need a specific item that defeats the point of Sekiro in my head, which is that I can do anything with just a sword and basically nothing else or whatever. But I need to use a specific item, and then the headless is, you slow down and everything like that. It's so... And you don't get anything. Here's the thing. If you got prayer beads out of killing them, then I would do it as a sense of, you know, I'm completing this aspect of the game. Like, these are mini bosses that I'm meant to, you know, that are... You're just... I don't know. They're mini bosses that I in my head I'm meant to complete, right? But they don't even drop prayer beads. So I'm like, what am I even doing this for? This is stupid. I just pretended they weren't part of the game. So I guess I could do that with everything, but... it's just how my brain works. I was able to mentally be like, okay, I need to do all bosses and mini bosses, so I need all the memories, all the prayer beads. Okay, the headless are just some weird random extra bullshit that just don't even count. They don't drop prayer beads, they just don't count. I was able to mentally justify it. But in every other game, like Dark Souls, I beat all the bosses and mini bosses. Dark Souls 3, well, it doesn't really have mini bosses, but Dark Souls, I beat all the bosses. Dark Souls 3, I beat all the bosses. It just feels good. GDN says, never leveled int IRL2. The raid will fail, lol. Oh, God. Shut the fuck up. That hurts to hear. What the fuck? Never leveled int in real life? What the fuck? Oh, Papa says, Tagashi did crazy fake out with Kite and nobody cared. Your point still stands, though. Hashtag Loda. I mean, I'm not... Do I talk about Hunter x Hunter every stream? This is a Hunter x Hunter channel. I don't know. I always thought that Kite was... In my opinion, Kite was a stupid plotline. I think it was good because you needed a necessary trigger for Gon and everything like that. So in that sense, it was good. But in my mind, Kite as a character and the how sad it was that Kite got taken out and how big of a deal they made out of it was stupid because we barely knew this dude. He just we barely knew this dude. It wasn't that much to it in my opinion. I felt like it was, in my opinion. It's fun because I think that, you know, different authors have different strengths. I think that a lot of Oda's strengths are not the same as Tagashi's strengths, and Tagashi's strengths are definitely not the same as Oda's strengths. They're different in that regard. I think a great example is the recent Phantom Troop flashback, right? Oda is a author that excels at making the reader really care about certain characters and then really, like, bawl your eyes out and cry when certain things happen in certain flashbacks. Like, he's really, really, really good at that, right? Classic flashbacks. Tagashi just did a Phantom Troop flashback that was really by the numbers, and it's, you know, it's, you get why it's sad, but do you really, really care that much? Who teared up reading the Phantom Troop flashback? I thought it started off strong. I just felt like the final hard-hitting moment of tragedy was really, just really standard. I don't know. It just didn't hit in any sort of way. Felt like a good attempt, I suppose. Similarly, I'd say that Tagashi can really make you... I think the more complex and nuanced he can often go with a sort of character storyline or dynamic, as you guys may know, with the particular pair of characters that are the primary source of tragedy in Chimerant, without spoiling anything. a particular pair of characters whose dynamic and relationship and the way that evolves and the way that that closes by the end of that arc, that emotionally is very, very powerful for me, right? But then it's funny in that the more classic route, right, which is, let's say, what happens to Kite, which is, oh no, mentor, parent figure, not even parent figure, really, like, a character dies or whatever, fake out death or whatever. I don't view that as a big spoiler. It's a minor piece of the arc, honestly. Something like that, I don't think that Togashi hits as hard with. So it's almost like I think things that Oda is better with, Togashi's not so good with. Things that Togashi's really good with, Oda doesn't really explore in his series. So they're very difficult authors to compare. Knut Worgen says, do you think York might threaten the world government to release all the info about the Void Sentry using Punk records? That could be really interesting, a really good route. That'd be very interesting. Because York's got to have a plan, right at the end of the day. She's a Vegapunk, she can't be that stupid. Leo Rector says, kind of random, but any takes with or against Murphy? Found her recently and noticed that you all have similar literary takes. Also, Usopp agenda never ends. I'll be honest, I don't know any of her... I don't know any of her takes, really, because I don't watch other One Piece YouTubers. So for me, unless something's very public, like I know I know JD Legend's a big Sanji fan because he projects that quite a bit on Twitter and his persona there. But aside from that, I don't know most people's One Piece takes or opinions nowadays at all. I don't know. I think the most I know is when people's random power scaling stuff that they'll share on Twitter, or if people really like or dislike one of Zoro or Sanji. That's pretty much all I got. So I don't really watch any other One Piece YouTubers nowadays. Kali D. Suleiman says, I miss when these long tangents used to be about NBA. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. I think there is a greater overlap between Elden Ring players, I suppose, and One Piece viewers. Makes sense for that over NBA viewers. GDN says, oh no, we covered this one. We'll skip this one. Daniel Harrington says first boss. No, we covered this. Am I just scrolling back? Okay, I'm going out of order. That's what's happening. Ray Uchiha says, before you watch The Owl House, you should watch Amphibia. What does it mean that... What does it mean that Owl House is like Reddit? I guess. I don't know. I guess I kind of know what it means, but let's see. Calamari says, the thing about Elden Ring is that you can always go and do something else if something is too hard at the moment. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I guess with Elden Ring, it's open worlds. Yeah, I guess you can kind of just roam. That probably makes it really hard to gauge boss difficulty too, because your level is just... As you progress through Dark Souls or Dark Souls 3, you're generally going to be at a certain level for each part of the story, right? Or at least a certain range. Generally, right? Whereas I suppose if Elden Ring is really just open world, then you could fight anything at any point and be way too strong or way too weak. I don't know. I guess I'll understand more as I play. Gahana PBR says, Morj, is that pic in the back a hologram or real? That is something that you can purchase for yourself. I'm glad that you asked. If you want this poster for your own room, then simply follow this link that I'm pinning right now. Popa says, Lord skipped my super. Did I? No, we covered that. We covered that. Banort says, thanks for considering watching The Owl House. The first season is a 7 out of 10. You're not selling me on it. But seasons 2 and 3 are a 9. You're really not selling me on this. Because you gotta understand, people are recommending me so many things. There's so many things that I'm supposed to watch or read, right? Supposed to be reading Kingdom right now. Not supposed to be playing video games. That's for sure. Um, you're telling me one season's a 7, the other two are 9s, which that sounds good, but I need to hear some 10s, you know? You should just told me they're all 10s. You should just said every season's a 10. Also, third season got drastically shortened due to executive meddling, but people still love it, including me. You really should leave this information out. Simon D says, hi, Margarine. That's new. Do you think any of the home islands of any of the admirals will have significance in the story? Maybe small chance of Kainu's if we're getting any sort of backstory for him. Margit's harder than Gale and Freed for sure. Nameless is iffy. Yeah, I guess the tricky part is what you consider harder between Gale, Freed, and Nameless. Here's looking at me, Morj, says Sheriff Lafitte. Yeah, Casablanca reference. Yeah, I just think people are talking about Headless now. I think Terror. I just don't think Terror is a good. I just don't think Terror is a good. What do you call? I just don't think it's a fun mechanic. I thought it was cool. I mean, obviously, who's gonna be like, oh, I think poison and toxic and all this shit is great. I love getting poisoned and toxic, but I think specifically with Sekiro, because the fun of the game really is that you can, it feels like you can combat everything with just your sword. Obviously stuff like, you know, fire or poison gas that the drunkard breathes and stuff, there's exceptions, but you don't have to interact with those, whereas with the Headless you do have to interact with Terror just by virtue of trying to have a sword fight with it, right? I think the only time I thought Terror was really cool in the game was, I didn't like it at first, I appreciated it afterwards, was the Guardian Ape fight phase 2, which utilizes Terror, because the that fight, I think I've said this on stream before, it really did a number on me mentally in terms of just the sheer scale of the obstacle that it felt like when I was playing, and I was like, I know I'll beat this eventually. Overall, I think it took me 2 hours something probably. So nothing like crazy long. But up till then, I'd beaten every boss, you know, in an hour give or take. So this one, I was just like, I don't know about it. It just seemed like such a wall, and the Terror aspect of phase 2, it just felt so fitting. It stands out in my head as so memorable because that's really what I struggled to figure. I struggled to get through the first phase, and when I finally beat the first phase, you're met with this next phase, which is just legitimately scary. The feel that the phase 2 of Guardian Ape gives when you're first learning to fight it, at least for me, is very, very, very memorable. Because it's this gorilla that's now without a head, and it turns into this very snake-like, slithering giant creature with a sword that seems, I don't know, it's just this winding, strange monstrosity snaking through the valley to you. There's nowhere for you to run. You have to turn to it and fight. And then on top of that, every now and then it'll just release this blast of air that you can't deflect, that you can't do anything about. You just have to run away, and you're scared, and it's literally saying Terror on the screen, and you have a terror bar that's filling up, and the scream that it's releasing as it lets out this terror is genuinely very very traumatic. The first several times you just die to it, you don't know what to do. So just the incorporation of Terror in that fight was at the very least very memorable. Because it genuinely, like phase 2, when I was first trying to figure it out, getting through phase 1 was so difficult, and then phase 2 feels like a nightmare, and genuinely a very scary, not just difficult, it feels scary. This fucking slithering giant gorilla winding towards you. You can't run anywhere. It's got this snake. It's weaving. You can't do anything. It's this giant, scary serpent-like headless ape monster, and then it screams this unearthly scream, and it's just terror is all across the screen, and your health bar is just rapidly going down, and then you're like, fuck, I died, and I have to go back to phase 1 again. It's just scary. Now I don't think that the Guardian Ape is hard, because you get to go back and fight it in the boss things or whatever, the boss memories or whatever. But at the time, it's just a very, very memorable experience. That's the only time I think Terror was cool, because it really fit the bill of what I was experiencing while I was playing that gorilla. So no, we covered this. Ahmed Booth says Morj is 2'7", 4'7". Opopa says, put Succession on your watch list. Only series on the same tier as Breaking Bad and Prime Game of Thrones tier. I've heard really good things about Succession. Only 4 seasons and ending strong at the moment. Saved my life. I'll think about it. Bunfagum says, Morj, who is the true MVP of Whole Cake Island excluding Luffy? And then Wrench Dodger 2000 says, Brook got to be the Whole Cake Island MVP, right? No, this is the thing. I feel like this is what I talked about whenever I always talk about this whenever people say Brook is the MVP of Whole Cake Island. Brook is like the 6th man of the year of Whole Cake Island. Because the thing is that it's almost sad that Brook does so little every arc that the arcs that he actually gets to do stuff, it tricks people into thinking that he's the MVP. Throughout that arc, Brook didn't do that much. He did 2 big things, which was he got the poneglyph rubbings, which was a big moment for him because he very rarely does stuff like that, right? But he got the poneglyph rubbings from Big Mom. So it's just rare in general that Brook has a big contributing part to play in an arc. But getting the poneglyph rubbings is significant, right? So that was cool. And then he broke Mother Carmel's photo, which was a very important goal for the wedding. What people forget is that breaking Mother Carmel's photo didn't really lead to any positive outcome or progress, because the idea is you break the photo and that weakens Big Mom for her to be taken out, but they immediately failed to do that. So it's if you want to count it as one of Brook's big contributing moments, it's unfortunate reality check is that wouldn't have mattered whether he broke the photo or not. So in reality, if you want to be like, who was the second most valuable player throughout all of Whole Cake Island, you could make an argument for several Straw Hats. It's not Brook. It really isn't Brook. Nami for navigating the... Nami for pretty much... Nami's, I think, almost several tiers above Brook in terms of helpfulness for that arc. 1, navigating them there. If you want to just cross that off of Nami's list, it's just wildly unfair, because that's that's almost like punishing her for being too valuable. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, well, we can't vote LeBron for MVP because of course he's gonna average like 27, 7, and 7. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we can't vote LeBron for Finals MVP even though he averaged 27, 7, and 7 because he's just supposed to do that. So let's give it to, that guy off the bench who actually contributed 20 points or something. That's what it's like if you're trying to take away navigation from Nami. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of taken for granted, right? But Nami got them to Whole Cake Island in the Seducing Woods. Nami saves them from being captured in the Seducing Woods by using Big Mom's Vivre card, right? So she gets them away from Brûlé, she helps Luffy defeat Cracker, and then she gets them out of the Seducing Woods. So Nami gets them all the way out of the Seducing Woods. That's all her, pretty much. Her, because we're not counting Luffy in this situation. So Nami saves them there. Then over the course of the escape scene, right, Nami's the only one who ever temporarily slows down Big Mom at multiple points. Once with lightning in the Seducing Woods as they're exiting, and then once with lightning again when she's on the ship. But most importantly, Nami navigates them out of Whole Cake Island, right? So Nami, it's hard to spin it any other way than Nami basically saves their asses more times than anybody else throughout the story. And then most importantly, if you look at who's taking charge and leading the crew for most of the situation while they're escaping once Luffy's in the mirror world, it's generally Nami. So I think you kind of got to give it to Nami as being the most valuable overall in terms of. And then here's the thing to top it off, which is Brook and the Poneglyphs, which is his biggest contribution. What people forget is that Brook was captured with the Poneglyphs, and then Nami had to come in and save him and retrieve the Poneglyphs by retrieving Brook, right? So Brook doesn't get the Poneglyphs back if Nami doesn't get Brook back. I think it's very, very hard to make an argument that Brook was more valuable than Nami in Whole Cake Island, unless, like, because even his one big contribution, which was the Poneglyph rubbings, Nami deserves at least like 30 to 40% of the credit for that because she saved him after he got the rubbings. And then beyond that, Nami basically saved their asses out, like getting them there, getting them out of seducing woods alive, getting them out of Whole Cake Island alive, contributing the most against Big Mom over the course of the arc, contributing towards the Poneglyph rubbings. I think it's pretty unquestionably Nami. You could also make an argument for Jinbei, I suppose, because Jinbei steered them out and he got them out of Big Mom's tidal wave and things like that. He was the biggest combat presence in keeping them alive, I suppose. He brought the Sun Pirates help and everything. He got Luffy and Nami out of jail. So Jinbei, it's either Nami or Jinbei, I think. But it really, really, really isn't Brook. For me, it bothers me every time people bring up Brook being MVP of Whole Cake Island because it speaks to the sad state of Brook where it's like he does so little throughout the story that anytime he gets a highlight moment at all, it's like he's like this funny comical gag side character. He's not a main character. People don't view him as a main character or a real Straw Hat. He's like this funny gag side tag along character that it's like, oh my god, look how he helped. He helped in such a special way. He's the MVP. It's like, it's just the most pandering shit. It's like, it makes people forget how useless he is overall because when he does anything at all, it gets overblown. You guys get what I'm saying? See, people, okay, Big Brooke called Big Mom a young lady. That's what's being brought up. That's not. How's that valuable? What does that do? Just because he looks cool for a moment doesn't make him. That's not MVP. That's not contributing anything to their overall success. He loses and gets captured. He looks cool for a moment, but that's not what an MVP is. Tala Jahan says in post time skip, Sanji greater than Nami is more of a main character. I would agree. Hidden Sun God says can't believe the Brook hate right now. No, it's me lamenting. What do you call? Wrench Dodger 2000 says Brook is not a real Straw Hat. No, it's me lamenting the sad state of where his character's at, where he really gets so little character focus and character love in the story that when Oda gives him anything, it feels so out of the norm that it skews people into feeling like Brook was the MVP or something. If you stack up what he actually did over the course of the arc, it's still really little, and it's still less than Nami, less than Jinbei, less than Luffy, obviously. It's really only above Chopper. And Chopper was pretty big too, in that the whole reason that they were able to survive for most of the first half of Whole Cake Island was thanks to the Mirror World Network, which they were able to abuse, which was thanks to Chopper and his plan. So Brook really actually did very, very little in Whole Cake Island. It's just that, again, the sad state of Brook as a character and how little he's used throughout the story. I mean, he was a fucking footnote in all of Wano. He's used so little throughout the story. Wano, Zod, Dressrosa, Punk Hazard, basically a footnote, right, throughout all these arcs, that the one arc that some stuff happens for him, it's unfortunate that people are so used to such low expectations for him that it tricks people into thinking that, oh my god, he was the best, like, he did so much in the arc. It's like, dude, no, have higher expectations for this character, please. Like, just because it feels like he's this gag side character, not a real Straw Hat, like, no, hold him to the standards of a real Straw Hat. We take for granted that Nami was basically running the show 80% of the time throughout that arc. Brook contributing 2 cents here or there. We should have higher hopes for him as a character. He should be doing shit like this every single arc, the way that most Straw Hats are, you know. Well, I won't say so much in the New World, but most Straw Hats, we just have higher expectations of what Zoro, Nami, Sanji, Chopper, Robin, etc. are going to contribute over the course of an arc, you know? CY says people call Brook the MVP of Whole Cake Island because it's literally the only arc he's done anything in since joining the crew. Exactly. That's what I'm trying to get across. So it's not Brook hate. It's more so wake up, people. What you enjoyed out of Brook from that arc, you should be hoping for stuff like that from him every arc, if not every other arc, right? It's kind of just like, I'm not trying to downplay what Brook did. I'm just saying, look at what he actually did and realize that your expectations for the character are basically in the gutter because the standards for him are so low, we hardly even view him as a real stride at this point, right? If it's just, it's in the gutter, you know? Hawkbox says Morj uses a booster seat while driving, 5'1". Behenort says I changed my mind. The Owl House is a 10 out of 10. Please watch it. In all seriousness, I do think it'll be remembered as the best cartoon of this era. It's that good. Yeah, I don't know about is it like a cart? No, it's what show? You said it's on Disney Plus, right? I don't really know what cartoons turned into after I grew up because again, I just grew up with the generation that had stuff like Grim Adventures, Fairly Odd Parents, Codename Kids Next Door, Ed, Ed and Eddie, Teen Titans, things like that. Chowder was still a thing. Chowder was a thing as I kind of aged out of cartoons. I just don't know that much about the era of cartoons after my time, you know? I know people love Adventure Time. I know Regular Show you guys talk about a lot. Am I going to start hearing about the the Owl House a lot? I don't know. Okay, I think I'm caught up here. Tala Jahan says Sanji's initial design is Oda's MC of Wanted. That's true. I don't hear that discussed much at all for some reason. Because people will always bring, like myself, I'll bring up that Zoro is the MC of Monsters a lot, but Sanji Sanji looks a lot like the MC of Wanted. I'm trying to pull up for you guys. There's a way to read all of his, because Oda's one-shots, you guys may not know this, but his one-shots are actually really, really fun to read. Like, really, really, really fun to read. He's got the ones I can remember. There was only one I didn't really care for. The one I actually thought was the best was like God's Gift to Mankind, which was it was more so a comedy one. Then I thought Monsters were good. Then I thought the Gunslinger one was good, which is what's being referenced here. Is Wanted the Gunslinger one, or is that just am I crazy? One of them was the Gunslinger one, and that's who you're talking about, right? What's the Gunslinger one? Israel Omedo says 90s babies are the best. I love Ed, Ed and Eddie, Kids Next Door, and Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. Yeah, I like all those shows. It's just that it's one of those things where do we all just assume that the era that we grew up with, the shows that we watched growing up, are the best era of shows, and we'll just always feel some sort of way about the new generation of shows because it's not our stuff that we grew up with. I don't know. It's called Hunter. Wanted is the Gunslinger one. Yeah, I think it's cool that Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji are all. ideas that Oda clearly has pretty close to his heart. Monster is the best story, like the best one-shot story, as I recall, especially because of the little ending twist to it. I think that that's a really creative idea. I like that quite a bit. I think God's Gift to Mankind is my favorite, and it is called that, right? God's Gift to Mankind. God's Gift for the Future is what it's called. Yeah, that's my favorite. It's the funniest. I think it's actually peak Oda humor. You can see exactly his style of humor in that. Spade says Gangster Gastino, the real MVP. He's got an argument for that. All right, I'm going to wrap the stream in a little bit. Probably 5-ish minutes. CBCC says Monster has so much not needed filler, but it's amazing. I'm talking about Monsters. It's called Monsters. Oda's one shot, right? Or is it just called Monster? It's a one shot by Oda. Yeah, it's Monsters. I should stop saying Monster. Abrar Ahmed says, I think generally speaking, each era of cartoons have their own appeal for its generation, but some of them are just good in all eras. That's definitely true. I mean, Looney Tunes was still good. Old school Looney Tunes you can still turn on and watch, and it's still enjoyable. I mean, that stuff would come on Boomerang when I was a kid. And I didn't actually differentiate that much between that versus newer cartoons like a Grim Adventures or something. I just liked all of them. It took a while before I realized that, oh, some of these are from 40 years ago versus some are really recent. Mason Hack says 6 Shanks frame. If you want it, you can click the link above. Click the link above to get yourself a Shanks poster. Let me show you guys up close. One more time. This poster is by Abood. Very good artist. He's got other stuff coming that will also be in the store soon. And yeah, it's just a really fucking good Shanks poster. I don't know where you see an artwork like this of Shanks, a really close-up cool image of his face. You can get it for your wall, get it for your bedroom, get it for wherever. It's just a good poster. Virgil Hawkins says, exactly, each generation has different strengths. Yeah, I think that it's just interesting to see the soft... Because humor is humor at the end of the day, right? Certain things are just always funny. It's just the nuances to what that is, the beats, the pacing, the little changes in how jokes or characters or the type of comedic world is, or how... I think things trended more and more towards random, at least as I was stopping watching cartoons, if I remember. Random was just funnier. I remember Chowder is a really, really just bizarre, surreal show, honestly, with a lot of just strange shit. Like, he'll just have a plate of food, and then the food's talking, and it's got their own little conversation going, and then the food dies because it gets eaten. And so, I don't know, just all sorts of really strange shit, but I really enjoyed Chowder for what it was. So I don't know what the general direction of kids' comedy is, but I think it'll always reflect the general changing scope of what, you know, young people are finding funny, and that affects, you know, as they grow up and become teenagers and stuff, that affects what they're finding funny on social media. Then as they become young adults, once you're in the young adult, early 20s range, etc., early 20s to probably mid 20s range, you kind of get to dictate what is cool / funny and not funny. So at the end of the day, cartoons have a lot of influence because the humor that you're growing up with as a kid influences, you know, you as a teenager and what you find funnier as a teenager and everything like that. And that ultimately influences the broader, I guess, accepted notions of what are funny once you hit your mid early 20s, etc. And basically you're the you're the young adult crowd that's basically deciding what is and isn't cool, what is and isn't popular, what is and isn't funny, what's old played out humor, what's new humor, new humor, new styles of jokes in today's era, obviously new styles of memes, internet comedy skits, things like that. So you can't underestimate how much influence childhood cartoons have, because it's just the ripple effect of what that has on this generation of kids, to what they're evolving to find funny as teenagers, to finally what they're coming out as young adults, and then they're basically dictating to the rest of the world, like, okay, this old shit not funny, this is the new shit that's funny, this is what funny means basically in the new era of things. L. Lolliot says, what prediction? The spoiler's already out. It is okay. No, fuck. Not gonna read the rest of it. Nobody read the rest of his comment. I know what the next. There's no predictions to talk about. We didn't talk about any predictions of the stream. It just became a bullshitting stream because the fucking. I'm so fucking sick of these spoilers, people, dude. These people who are spoiling chapters. The chapter comes out on Sunday, right? Isn't this insane? The chapter technically comes out on Sunday. And so it's a full week ahead that everybody already knows what's happening in the next chapter if you just look it up. I don't know the details of this chapter, but I know exactly the main character that is the hype piece of this chapter that shows up this chapter that it's kind of about, right? So I know that, which means I know I can extrapolate general details, basically. There's nothing to predict. So from now on, we can't really do, if there's a break week, can't really do a prediction stream on the Monday because there's nothing to predict. Everybody, like, probably 30% of people who come into this stream probably already know what's going to be up in the next chapter. Tuna Sub says, regular show ended up being such a classic because it's basically a stoner show wearing the disguise for kids show. That's good to know. Fun fact for people, if you've never seen this, in my opinion, the best stoner cartoon out there, period. In my opinion. Maybe you guys have some better recommendations, but it's Major Lazer, right? Not the artist. I mean, it is the artist, right? The band, but they've got a TV show, and it's animated, and they're really short episodes. I think the episodes are like 10 minutes or something like that. So they're really poppable, and they're specifically made for, I think they're basically specifically made for stoners. Digimon are the champions. You know what's funny is that I thought that nobody watched Digimon when I was a kid, and then recently I found out. I swear I met like this was I think a full year ago. I was in a group conversation where there was a girl who knew about Digimon. Well, she's not just knew about Digimon. She was like a big time Digimon fan. And then this other girl in the group was also a big time Digimon fan, and she just knew everything that the other girl was talking about. And I was like, is this for real? Is this happening? I thought that there were no Digimon fans in existence, let alone a grown woman. Like, she's older than I am. And let alone two of them who happen to be in the same group conversation as I am right now, and they both know everything about this fucking show. I just didn't believe, I couldn't understand what was happening. OG3 says, Morj, have you ever seen Peep Show? Peep Show is funny. I've seen a lot of, it's one of those shows where I've seen a million clips of it on YouTube. So I even get a lot about the general plot lines that took place over the course of the show, just very out of order. And I feel like I've got a good sense of the show's comedy. I think Peep Show is really, really funny. Really, really funny, really creative idea. All right, I'm gonna call the stream in 5 minutes. Fake Detective says Dark Souls stream when. What I'm thinking is maybe next Monday, if I have no other ideas, I'll do a Sekiro stream, and I'll just talk about Dark Souls and stuff during that stream. I don't feel like doing a Dark Souls or Dark Souls 3 stream just because I feel like they're more in Sekiro. I want to get the one ending that gets you alternate bosses, which is the Shura ending. So I want to do that, and also I think I just feel like that's a game that um it's just the combat, right? So I feel like I can talk a lot while I'm playing, if that makes sense. Dark Souls you can too, but there's more drudge work involved. Not saying Dark Souls is worse or anything. I'm just saying the nature of the game is, I gotta be running back to shit a lot, and like, if I die, I gotta. It's slower. You know what I mean? So I'm thinking Sekiro just seems like the easier thing to just do. But I want to use that to talk, like that, those sort of, like I'll have Sekiro on, but I'll probably be talking about my experiences playing Dark Souls, Dark Souls 3, stuff like that. Basically, I want to play, I want to be playing Sekiro while talking about Dark Souls and Dark Souls 3, because those are more fun to talk about. Sekiro, there's actually not that much to talk about at the end of the day. The game is so fucking good for what it is. Still the best combat out of the 3 games by far. It's just the most fun gameplay, like raw gameplay, like fighting a thing, fighting a boss, fighting a mini boss even. It's just the most fun, the most exhilarating, the most exciting, the most satisfying by far. The one that everybody says Sekiro feels, it imitates the idea of combat way better, and that's true, because Dark Souls, not to say Dark Souls and Dark Souls 3 aren't skilled in terms of what you're having to do with combat, and the combat isn't very fun, but ultimately you're just somersaulting everywhere, right? You're somersaulting everywhere. Sekiro it feels like every battle is a true duel, a very well-paced back and forth flow of just a very well-paced back and forth flow of combat, which is just what you want out of a game, right? You feel like your hits, you can get them in, and you can block, and then you can counterattack, and then you can just react to. It's just such a beautiful flow of action gameplay, right? That being said, outside of that, I'm not interested in the Sekiro lore, expanding my knowledge about the universe. Like, I wasn't really looking up more videos about the Sekiro lore or anything like that after it. I spent a good deal of time after beating the game just running around, trying to find more interesting stuff. Like, maybe some enemies I haven't beaten. I, looked up some side quests I can do and stuff like that. I revisited areas to search nooks and crannies. There's not that many nooks and crannies to search. I wasted a lot of time just running around Sekiro, the Sekiro world, just doing nothing, just running back, killing random enemies and stuff again, running through Ashina Castle area at night, just, fighting random red soldiers and the generals and stuff like that. And after a while, there's nothing to do. I replayed the bosses and stuff. There's just nothing to do past a certain point. None of that's to say anything bad about Sekiro. It just does everything that it is supposed to do so well. But Dark Souls and Dark Souls 3 draw me in more to re-engage with just talking about that game, looking up shit about that game, wanting to play that game again. Sekiro I want to play again just because, as I'm saying, it's I can do it more mindlessly, if that makes sense, and I'm really just trying to get the new ending, right? Dark Souls, if I play Dark Souls or Dark Souls 3, I want to kind of feel more immersed and not be streaming. Virgil Hawkins says, why did you like Bleach so much? Plus, watch HBO's Barry. Barry, I've heard so many good things. There's so many shows. People are saying Succession, Barry, The Owl House, Pokemon Adventures, right? But Succession and Barry, I've seen a lot of clips of Barry, actually. I get it. I get why Barry's cool. I saw the clip of, what's that guy's name? I've never seen a full episode of Barry, but this guy's usually my favorite character. His name is, what is it? NoHo? Yeah, NoHo Hank. He's very funny. He's very funny. I've seen lots of clips of Barry. It looks like a good show. Why did I like Bleach so much? Simple answer. I was in middle school, and it was the second anime I was ever watching. One Piece was the first. If we don't count Yu-Gi-Oh! And Dragon Ball Z and Pokemon, because I didn't even register that they were anime when I was a kid, right? One Piece was the first anime. Bleach was the second anime. And here's the thing. Bleach's Soul Society arc holds up really, really well. It is just pure shonen goodness. I feel like I say a lot of things are just really well done shonen, but I'm always referring to the same ideas when I say that, which is a shonen series, when it's excelling at shonen things, in my mind, pulls off just you want to feel very empowered, if that makes sense. You want to feel very empowered. You want to feel as though you've gotten behind this character's struggle against certain odds, against greater forces or something like that, and somehow become stronger, surpassed their limits, just exceeded all expectations, overcame these insurmountable odds in some really epic, an epic manner that makes you feel satisfied, that makes you feel, by extension, just happy, like a sense of euphoria, a sense of joy, just a sense of sort of the hell yeah sort of a feeling, right? Hell yeah, all these nasty evil bad guys or whatever doing all this nasty evil shit, they weren't ready for when my main character had to go through all of his character bullshit and stuff and come out of it way stronger with his power up, with all of his willpower and everything like that, and just ready to kick ass, and he showed them all what's what. That's what shonen storytelling really feels like to me at its core. You want to feel really, really empowered by the end of it, right? That's why when people try and knock shonen stuff for not being as mature or complex as Sen and stuff, it's just like, probably not, yeah, but they're going for two different things, right? I don't finish out reading Golden Age and feel empowered or some shit because I'm not supposed to. There's a lot more complex emotions and ideas there. But at the end of the day, in terms of just raw, get me excited and happy and just satisfied by virtue of getting to indulge in this character's hero's journey, right? That's what really good shonen does, in my opinion. And I think Bleach's Soul Society arc does that perfectly, pretty much. Everything up to Ichigo defeating Byakuya, which shouldn't be a spoiler at this point, it's just, in my mind, like, as good as any shonen arc, you know? Alright, guys. Virgil Hawkins says, I would get the same feeling reading Slam Dunk and Haikyuu. Yeah, I guess those are more grounded in reality and stuff, but I'm sure I would probably get the same feeling. I believe that Haikyuu is, everyone says Haikyuu is so good. I'll get into it at some point. I'll get it at some point, guys. I'll get it at some point. At some point. At some point. Alright. I'm pretty much good to wrap. Let me make sure there's something else. Or there's not anything else. Okay. I think I'm good. Alright, guys. Thanks for tuning in. I will talk to you all later.